Hello, my name is Eric, and welcome to this week's video lesson. Last week, we looked at the work done by the waves, which is erosion, transport, and deposition. Today, we'll explore further the landforms created by these processes. So this week's lesson is landforms created by waves. Today's lesson is based on Unit 4.3, that's page 54 and 55 of your book. But before we start that, let's have a look at two landforms. So here we have two different landforms created by the waves. So what are the main differences between these? See if you can answer these questions. What are they made of? How were they made? What did they look like in the past? And what will they look like in the future? So I'm not going to answer these questions for you right now, but throughout the lesson, we will explore and we will find out. So our goals for today, we want to know what landforms are created by the waves. We want to understand the processes that form these landforms. And you'll also have to be able to describe and illustrate how the landforms were created. So let's start by looking at the different landforms we find along the coastline. So these landforms were created by waves, by eroding and depositing material. So the waves are like a sculptor, constantly changing the shape of the coastline. The coast is made of different kinds of rock. Some is hard and some is soft. Perhaps it was straight one day, but look at it now. So number one, hard rock erodes more slowly than soft rock. So now cliffs of hard rock jut out, forming a headland. Jut out means to stick out or extend out. For example, this book is jutting out from the bookshelf. You see it's sticking out beyond the other books. And the headland juts out from the coastline. It sticks out beyond the rest of the coast. Number two, at the base of the cliffs is a wave-cut platform. Number three, here the softer rock has been eroded away. So between two headlands, we have a bay. Here is another headland, and this one has been quite eroded, and we can see a cave, an arch, and a stack. Also below the stack is something called a stump. This is when the stack has been eroded lower and lower, and now it barely sticks out above the water. So the eroded material is carried along the coast by longshore drift. We studied about longshore drift last week. Some of that material, that sand, is deposited in sheltered areas like this one, forming a beach. Here we have another headland. The coast juts out here, and then it curves to form a sheltered bay. This interrupts the longshore drift. So the longshore drift stops here, and when the transport stops, the sand and shingle are deposited. So this builds up something called a spit. So a spit is like a long finger of sand extending out into the sea. The end of the spit is usually curved by the waves. And behind the spit, it's sheltered. So we have more deposition here. And this will build up and create a salt marsh. A salt marsh is an area of land that's flooded during a high tide. It's kind of swampy land. It's usually grassy, and it will appear muddy when the sediment is exposed during low tide. So let's have a look at how some of these landforms are created. So the first one is the wave cut platform. So number one, the waves carve out wave cut notches in the cliffs at the headland. So a notch is a cut in the surface of something. So in this photograph, we can see notches along the cliff. So the notches in time will get deeper and deeper until the rock above them collapses. So the notches undercut the rock above, and then gravity will cause it to collapse in time. The sea will carry away that debris. The debris just means the broken pieces of something. In this case, it's the broken cliff, the rock. So the sea will carry it away, leaving a wave-cut platform. Now in this picture, the wave-cut platform is under the sea, but during low tide it will be exposed, like the picture I showed you previously. The second landform we'll look at is cave, arch, and stack. Now these are all related landforms. Number one, they start out as cracks in the cliff at the headland. The cracks grow larger and in time will form a cave. The erosion continues and the cave gets eroded all the way through the headland and it turns into an arch. But one day, the arch will collapse, leaving a stack. So the stack is a pillar left standing alone. And in time, the waves will erode that stack down until it becomes a stump. So your turn. In your notebook, copy and complete this table and put a tick to show how each one was formed. So pause the video while you get your notebook and copy this table. Okay, if you've finished, we can check. So the headland, our example, is formed by erosion. So the cliff is eroded faster where there's soft rock, and the headland of hard rock is left jutting out. The wave-cut platform is also formed by erosion. So the cliff is eroded and it retreats back, leaving a platform at the bottom. The bay is also formed by erosion. The soft rock erodes faster, cutting out a bay in the coast. How about the arch? The arch is also formed by erosion. Cave, that too is erosion. And the stack is also erosion. So erosion will cause the arch to collapse, leaving the stack standing. Next up is the beach. This time it's formed by deposition. So a beach forms when the waves deposit material along the coast. A spit. This is also formed by deposition. So the spit is formed as sand is deposited at a sheltered area. And the salt marsh is also formed by deposition. Behind the spit, we have a sheltered area where sediment builds up and forms a marsh. Okay, continuing. In your notebook, you're going to draw a sketch of the landform in this photo. So this photo, we can see a wave-cut notch, an arch, and a stump. So sketch this into your notebook. Then write a short description of how the arch was formed. Then draw a dotted line to show where there was once another arch. So there's an arch that has now disappeared. Where did it used to be? And also, what will happen to the stump over time? So again, pause the video, draw your sketch, try to answer these questions, and then we will check. So here's a sketch that I drew. First, I just did a simple pencil outline. Then I went over it with black pen to show texture and to highlight the shapes of the features. And then I added a little more shading for some 3D effect. So that's my sketch. Now I need to label. First one, the wave cut notch, we can see down here. Here is the arch, the stack, and the stump. So how was that arch formed? The waves eroded a notch in the headland. Over time, the notch got deeper and became a cave. Eventually, the cave got eroded all the way through the headland, creating an arch. That's it. So your answer should be similar. Let's check the next question. Draw a dotted line to show where there was once another arch. So the stack formed when an arch collapsed. So I can tell there used to be an arch here. You can see the dotted line on my diagram. And what will happen to the stump over time? So at the moment, the stump is just sticking out above the surface of the sea, but in time, the stump will be eroded away completely. So it will be eroded away, and the material will be transported somewhere else. So this is the second picture I showed you at the beginning of the lesson. This is a photo of a spit. So what are the features labeled X and Y on this diagram? From which direction does the prevailing wind blow, and how did you decide? So again, pause the video and try to answer these questions before we check. So X is a groin. We looked at groins a couple of weeks ago. They are barriers built to stop longshore drift. And Y is a salt marsh. So behind the spit, it's very sheltered. So there's a lot of deposition here. Sediment builds up, grass will start to grow in the mud, and this creates the marsh. Question 2, from which direction does the prevailing wind blow? Well, first we have to know which direction we have in this photograph. So in the bottom right corner, we see the north arrow. And I can tell the prevailing wind is blowing in the direction of the arrow I've put onto the photograph. So the prevailing wind blows from the southwest. The wind influences the waves, which have transported sand from the southwest to the northeast by the process of longshore drift. The spit was formed as a result, growing from the southwest to the northeast. So we can see the direction of the spit coming out from the coast, and that tells us the direction of the waves. So let's review the main points of today's lesson. So the landforms along the coast are formed by erosion and deposition. Headlands, bays, wave-cut platforms, caves, arches and stacks are all formed when softer rock is eroded faster than harder rock. Beaches, spits and salt marshes form when material is transported by landform drift and then deposited in sheltered areas. So that is the end of today's lesson. Thank you for joining me, and I'll see you again next week. Bye-bye.